This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. I'm your host, Rabanzo. This podcast features conversations with me and indie music artists. Conversations intended to help other indie musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. So, as you know, I love sharing my personal experience and the things I'm learning from other musicians and songwriters here on the podcast. And you also know that you can be privy to those learnings by joining the Unstarving Musician community. In the process, you probably also know you'll be supporting this podcast. Just go to unstarvingmusician.com to join. In doing so, you'll get an email from me usually every 7 to 10 days with tips, hacks, insights, tricks, all the things you need to know to make your music journey a little better and brighter. And you'll also get a free gift from me, a token of my appreciation for being part of the Unstarving Musician movement. Emmanuel Tomes is an Austin-based vocalist and blues funk guitarist. He and his sister Elyssa worked together on his 2018 release, October Skies. He unfortunately lost his sister in 2016 before the project was finished, but lucky us, he made it happen. He finished and released the EP. You'll hear a track from October Skies at the end of our conversation. Emmanuel and I talk about how October Skies eventually got released, what he'll do differently on his next release, why he's not overly active on social yet, how and why songwriting is and can be a challenge, songwriting groups, a wee bit about his playing style, influences, and inspiration. I finished our conversation thinking to myself that Emmanuel is reserved by nature, a bit shy if you will. I definitely asked questions about this and hopefully got him thinking about putting his face out there for his fans, existing and yet to be discovered. The world definitely needs his music. Here is me and Emmanuel Tomes. Okay, we're just going to keep rolling here. So, did you grow up in San Antonio?
I did. Kind of bounced around all over the place, but I think mostly we lived sort of in the northeast side of San Antonio, near kind of like the airport. Went to MacArthur there, graduated, kind of stuck around for a while, and attended San Antonio Community College for a few years. Then finally headed north to Austin to finish up everything in terms of bachelor. And yeah, I've kind of been back and forth. I went back to San Antonio to go to grad school, but I was still living in Austin, but kind of bouncing back and forth and kind of doing the full band thing with my sister at that point. And eventually just ended up here in the Austin area, working in the Austin area as well after I finished grad school.
Well, they are both lovely towns. I grew up in Fort Worth and Arlington and visited San Antonio with some regularity a number of years back. It's been quite a while since I've been there, but was in Austin just last year, and I'm making more and more friends there and in San Antonio because of the podcast, so I'm hoping to maybe go to San Antonio or Austin on our next visit too, so it would be wonderful if I get to meet you in person. Maybe see you play. Yeah, maybe see you play.
Cool.
You know, I heard and I noticed you have cats, and I bring it up because I was trolling your Facebook just trying to learn some things about you and saw that you something to the effect of having spent money for some sort of cat tower castle thing, but they go crazy over cardboard boxes, and I was laughing because we have a cat that's I was asking my wife today, he's about 8 years old, and he's a nut for little boxes that he can get inside. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, my orange tabby is just obsessed with them. He loves baskets and boxes. Can't get enough of them.
Crazy guys, huh? And by the way, what was that part of town in San Antonio that you mentioned that you grew up in? How is that different from, or what's kind of characteristic of that part of town?
So I always call it the Northeast. For some reason, I always associate the school district I went to, which is, of course, reasonable, with sort of where I grew up. And I always think Northeast because I grew up, going to Northeast ISD schools. So it's just the northeast side of the town, really. Other than your typical interregional sort of differences, there's no, it's pretty much standard thing. It was near the airport. I remember that going back and forth to the airport all the time. I remember that it was near there, but other than that, yeah, nothing too distinct about it, I suppose.
When did you get into playing music?
Kind of grew up in the church, singing in the choir for years and years, and got really sort of technically sound at the art of singing. And then that kind of all went away when I started playing sports. So I kind of branched out into the sports thing probably when I was about 14 or 15. But still around music. My dad was in a band. He had a band when we were sort of old enough to notice that. They would play in the garage. They'd play, 80s pop, rock, country, all kinds of stuff. A few original stuff, but mostly covers. He was in a band before that, before we were born, called The Finishing Touch, which we only got to see, I guess you'd say through pictures and, photographs and stuff, but it was kind of cool looking at that stuff. So yeah, we kind of grew up in the church and then that outside the church band, stuff like that. But wasn't really doing it myself, until maybe my second year in college. I started playing the guitar. It was Elliott Smith that actually inspired me to play. For some reason, when I started listening to Elliott Smith, I was just enamored with how his technicalities. He was just so well crafted in in playing the guitar. So I wanted to learn at least some of it. So I started playing like that and just kind of took off from there. Just started picking up other songs and eventually started writing, joining writing groups, stuff like that. And my sister was always a singer. Growing up, she went straight into doing it pretty much professionally. And I think one holiday gig, actually, she lost her guitarist, and she just sort of asked me, like, it was sort of this weird thing where it was like, duh, like type of thing. Like, why didn't we do this before? And she asked me to play this holiday gig with her. We did it, and we just started playing, and that's kind of how I got introduced to playing, publicly, like I guess you could say professionally, was with my sister, actually.
And we're talking about Elyssa, and did I say her name right?
Yes.
Okay.
And yes.
Okay. And I forgot to ask you before I hit the proverbial record button. Do you pronounce your last name Tomes or Tomes? Tomes? Tomes?
Tomes, like with a long O, Tomes.
I had to go through the gamut, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I get all kinds of pronunciations. It's sort of a weird short name. Maybe not so weird, but
Yeah. So when I was looking through your history, I saw that you lost your sister in 2016. Was she working, did I gather correctly also that she was working with you on October Skies in the beginning?
Yes. Yeah, we had been working on it for a while. Okay. Actually, yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the album, and maybe we can sort of as much as you would like to intertwine the two things or two topics, your sister and the album. But I did want to know about the album. It looks to me, at least it's the only one that's kind of publicly exposed. It's your sole release right now. I did gather that the two of you started working on it together and that you had decided to finish it, and it sounds fantastic, by the way. So can you tell me about it, and is there other recording history of that caliber, or is this kind of like your first, what you might call first bona fide release?
Definitely first bona fide release. There are recordings, I guess you could say, like, maybe not quite as touched up, but that I haven't really worked on. But my sister and I had been working on it with another, I guess you could say, producer. We were kind of going to his house probably every other week trying to work on vocals, but we were so unorganized, which is kind of why I mentioned that we'd been working on it for so long, because we didn't really know what we wanted to do and the kind of songs we wanted to record. We were just kind of playing out, and mostly playing covers, actually. out when we were playing live. But it sort of started coming together, and then she got sick, and then that sort of put everything on hold, of course. And then, she passed away, and it's actually been a little difficult with respect to getting a hold of some of the old stuff she had recorded. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I've not been able to put her stuff together and release it posthumously. But I did, as we've just been talking about, I was able to master some of the stuff I did myself and release that. So yeah, it's been sort of a long thing that only came out to be 5 songs, though. I'm pretty happy with it, nonetheless.
Yeah, you should be. It sounds cool. Was this the first, also kind of the first bona fide release for Elyssa, or had she done other recordings in the past?
I don't think she had ever really pressed anything, or not pressed, but really released anything digitally or of that sort of caliber. But she was definitely sort of out there a little more than me in terms of the live scene. So, in San Antonio, she kind of was semi well known in those sort of singing circles. But no, nothing released sort of original or anything like that.
What inspired the two of you to start on the project?
Probably the fact that we had been playing together for probably a year or so by then. And I was really into Ben Harper. And I just kind of I was just really into how his live scene he's really good live performer. He really puts on a good show. And I just always kind of wanted to, at first, just sort of emulate that, just sort of mimic that. And I always tried to push Elyssa to develop more of her, writing chops and stuff like that, so we could sort of try to do that kind of stuff. And that's kind of what did it. The fact that my sister was very well established, and then the fact that I was kind of like coming from the other angle of it, the more artistic side, I guess you could say, and adding that flavor to the duo. And that's kind of what sparked it.
And you mentioned that you were, the two of you were, I don't know if it was just the two of you, maybe it was the producer and some other, everyone involved all together, but you mentioned that the effort was disorganized. It sounds like at least in the beginning. And I would imagine that because others have gone through this, or have, it might be interesting or helpful for them to just sort of hear what had happened. So can you talk about what you were referring to when you say you're kind of disorganized with getting the project going?
Yeah. So I guess the most paramount thing would be sort of logistically oriented, and that was the fact that the guy we were working with was really far from me in particular, sort of far from my sister. She was still in San Antonio.
This is the producer?
The producer, yeah. I hesitate to use his name, but the producer, he lives in San Antonio. My sister also lives in San Antonio, but kind of on the other end of it. And I'm in Austin. So it was really difficult getting that together. So that was sort of number one. Number two was we didn't really have a sort of palette. Like we were just kind of going into the studio and just winging it from session to session. So it would have been really good to have, a completed song from start to finish, as much of the music as possible, all of the harmonies, or as much as possible, that kind of stuff. So you can go in and almost direct the person who's doing the producing. And to some extent, you can't tell them exactly what to do, but we didn't really do that. We kind of would go in and wait for instructions almost. So that was a problem because we recorded lots of stuff, but it was just really, it it wasn't very coherent. You couldn't really put these things together in an album. Some of it was of far better quality than the rest. So it was just kind of disorganized in that regard. Those were probably the main things.
And did, after your sister's passing, and I don't know at what point you picked the project back up or if you continued through, but did any changes occur for you that, outside of your sister's passing, obviously, but did anything change, or did you change anything to sort of get back on or get on track and become a little more planned out or thought out as you continued recording, or had the recording or the sessions already happened by the time you lost Elyssa?
Well, as far as the actual album goes, there was one recording that was completed prior to her passing. Mm-hmm. But the song "Show Me," that one I recorded at the producer's house, yada yada. But everything else was done, and this would also intertwine with what I changed. I got more technically sound with recording and mixing and semi-mastering. That's pretty difficult, but I tried. So I got better at that, and that's the majority of the songs on the album are a result of that, actually. So I would say that's the biggest thing that I changed, was that I just got more familiar with the fundamentals, and I just brought as much as I could in-house, which is cool for certain things. Obviously, having a professional studio is cool too. But even then, it's still good to kind of know what's going on. So that's really was the biggest change after Elyssa passed away.
And what did you end up doing for mastering? Did you take that on yourself as well, or did you seek outside help for that? Because you mentioned that's pretty hard.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine who's a little more technically oriented, Jose. He was also in the band when we played out. Really super talented guy. He plays the guitar like a madman, but he's also really good with the technical stuff. And he kind of helped me with that. And I also kind of used this algorithm program. I forget what it's called. I think it's called Lander or something. It's pretty good. It does a pretty good job of cleaning up your cuts and sort of mastering them with this sort of software, I guess.
Cool. Well, outside of what may seem obvious to people that are listening, and given the and obvious because of the circumstances of the album, having gotten through that and put out a great release, I presume that you're thinking about doing another one in the future. And if that is correct, what would you do? How will you approach it differently?
Yeah, I do have plans on doing something in the future. I think the thing that I will do differently, the main thing will probably be that I will try to do sort of a collaborative thing. Obviously with all the logistical issues in mind, I mentioned earlier, working with one or two more people sort of closely and tying a couple of instruments together, 2 or 3 instruments together, and recording that way. Mm-hmm. Doing a lot of it in-house, and then probably pushing out for a more professional master this go around. So that would be probably what I'm shooting for next time.
Cool. Have you been writing? Have you continued writing, or is that something that's you'll be working on in the near future as well, or have you continued writing?
I have not quite as much as I should, but I still am writing. And it's funny. I was listening to some of your older episodes, and the head of Mingo Fish Trap was on one of them, and he talked about the writing group. Mm-hmm. And I've been in those writing groups, actually. They are super helpful, and you're so productive in them. So it's funny. I got an email today from the I guess you'd say administrator of the group, Mark McGrahan. He is obviously a super talented writer, songwriter, singer, etc. So yeah, as a matter of fact, it's kind of funny that, obviously you asked that. It's just funny because, he sent the email today. But a part of this new, piece that I want to eventually get out, I'm hoping to get a lot of those songs from this group.
That'd be cool. Roger Blevins, you mentioned, he might have been the first person I had talked to about, or had enlightened me to songwriters groups, and I'm sure that several people that I had spoken to before have or do participate in them, but he just happened to mention one, so I, obviously asked some questions about it, not really being familiar with it, and then I'm trying to remember, I think it is Bradford Loomis, who was recently on the podcast, and he recently interviewed for an episode. He will be, we're recording on the 17th of January. I think he comes out not tomorrow, Friday, but the next one. But anyway, I believe it was him that was talking about songwriting groups, and that a number of songs that he did. No, you know what? I'm thinking of Tony Hara. His episode is out, but he was talking about songwriting groups and some of his peers, and just some instances where he knew of really great songs that they had written that came straight out of the groups and implied that they had been helpful for him. So anyway, I'm happy for you that you are either getting back involved in one, or that you, whatever the case is, whether you're recently involved in one or just kind of motivated to do it. It sounds like they're a great, I figured they were a great thing for a creativity standpoint, and I've mentioned this probably at least the third time I've mentioned it on the podcast, but I recently went to a writer's workshop for fiction. I didn't even have any plans to write fiction, but I'm having to write constantly, so I thought this is bound to be good for creativity. And it really is, and so I imagine that in some respects, the songwriters groups, I'm sure they can vary in the way that they're structured, but I would imagine that they're extremely helpful in helping with creativity and motivating you, to get off your rear and do that kind of stuff. What do you find the biggest, obstacles to writing? What has slowed you down?
Just other things. I guess you could.
Life.
Yeah, I was going to say, you could just sort of be straight about it. Yeah, it's just other thing. Yeah, I get sort of, I don't know why the term hamster brain comes to mind, but I get
what's the term?
Involved in other hamster brain.
Hamster brain. Okay.
I get involved in other pursuits. I'll get involved in other hobbies, and I'll kind of still play. I always pick up the guitar and play, and sing and stuff like that. But it does take a bit, like you said, it does take a bit of discipline to actually hone the craft. And to the point where, you get something that you can always write something you like, but for it to progressively, get more, I guess you could say get more creative, or just get more, not necessarily complex, but just get better, I guess you'd say, just get more attuned at it. So that's definitely why they help me. They help me stay disciplined about it, I guess you'd say.
And did you just recently rejoin one, or you're thinking about joining this one that you mentioned? Because a couple minutes or a few minutes before you mentioned hearing Roger Blevins on the podcast, I thought I heard you, maybe it was in the past, you mentioned songwriters groups. So have you, what's the deal? Are you in one already, or are you thinking about rejoining one?
There's a group online with a bunch of folks, not online, but it's hosted online. And it kind of goes in and out like semesters, like a university. And so I've kind of been out the last few semesters. And so that's how that goes. And got an email about the new spring semester coming up soon. So that's the one I'll be joining here shortly.
I love that. How long are the semesters, by the way? Roger and I might have talked about this, but I don't remember.
Oh shoot, I can't remember now. I think they literally do them in either 3 or 4 months, something like that.
Okay.
Just like a
college semester.
US semester. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if Ray Prim and I talked about this same group, or I'm mixing him up with conversation with Roger and someone else that I talked to about it, but they, mentioned it was, university style in semesters, which I think is really cool. And I wonder how many songwriters are out there that either have never done it and maybe even don't know about them. I find it hard to believe that there are many that wouldn't know about that these groups exist, but how many haven't done it and why, or how many have thought about, maybe I should start my own, but don't really know how. Have you run into any of those people?
No, I can't say that I have. Most of the musicians I mentioned that to, they kind of, it's a mixed bag. I'd say some people are either just kind of not interested in it, like they can't commit to it. The other some of the other artists I work with, mostly live folks, and they either can't commit to the whole weekly song commitment thing, or they have their own style. They have their own way of doing things, and the songwriting group isn't for them. I'd say those two are probably the most common.
I get that.
But yeah, and it's kind of funny. I actually get an answer of sort of a weird reaction, like it's a weird thing mostly from people who don't play. Like they're kind of they feel like it's an odd thing that you would need to have that structure to be creative. Which I never really thought about it until somebody said it, but yeah, I guess you could see it that way. But,
do these people,
some would argue you need the structure to be creative. That's kind of why creativity is its thing,
Yeah, definitely. I don't know, for people that don't think of themselves as creative, maybe they just think, I don't know, that the artists and writers and songwriters are perhaps flippant in their pursuits of creating stuff, but the more I learn about them, or others, I should say, who are creating things, that the more I learn quite the contrary. People have some sort of routine in place, and in fact, they're one of my favorite things to say. And a young artist I spoke with the last couple of weeks had mentioned something along the same lines of writing so many pieces before he comes up with something that ends up being a song, which essentially is something good in their mind or something that they like, or maybe I've heard it put other ways by writers that they'll write, the number's 10 or 100 is probably, maybe it's 10, but writing 10 pages for every one good one. Just you just got to write, as the gal who ran the workshop I was in recently. You just got to do it.
Right.
Well, switching gears, I notice, and I don't know if it's any different than usual, but I was kind of curious because I think very highly of you as a singer and musician from the short time that I've been listening to your work. And I notice that you're not online or on social much these days, and I don't know if that's always been the case. And I was looking at your website, which looks really nice, by the way. But kind of looks like it's waiting for you to come and do some stuff too as well. So where do you feel like you're at with the whole this marketing online, as we say, in music?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you. I guess the short answer would be I just haven't. I've been a little out of the marketing sort of game. I've been, I guess you could say, set in my ways with respect to I have this monthly gig that I play in San Antonio. It's like a residency type thing, and I do that once a month. It's pretty fun to meet people and sell some of my stuff and all that. So and I've kind of got set into that. So I haven't really. I put the website up, but I haven't really gone back to, do any updates with respect to any of the that residency that I mentioned, Charlie Brown's. But it's also probably a function of the fact I haven't really either tried to reach out to other venues very much. And it's just been I've just been frankly been kind of lazy about it, to tell you the truth. But it's something that I'd really like to get more involved in, and I will get more involved in. But I think it's mainly been the last few years, probably, it's with lease and everything. Although the website came up after that, it's still been sort of weird. And also just bought a house and work and stuff like that. That other life stuff that we were talking about.
Yeah, totally.
That's probably been the main thing. But I've been slowly sort of reaching out to people. A friend of mine was North Austin, Shane, he plays the sax. Another friend of mine, Logan, he plays drums. Sort of been reaching out to these guys, kind of planting the seeds that, kind of wanted to start getting a little more serious about it, getting together and, having something, a couple of sets maybe kind of down before we start reaching out again.
For doing gigs.
Doing gigs, right.
Yeah,
right.
cool.
As far as the writing, as far as the album, that's probably more a function of the songwriting group at this point. I have a few things that I could probably start working on in terms of mixing and mastering at this point, but I feel like I'd like to do some new stuff.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, don't beat yourself up too much. I know we were talking at the very beginning of our conversation that you do work at a job these days and that you have done music full-time in the past. And so, clearly have a lot going on and have had a lot going on, especially with the changes in your family and Elyssa passing away. So totally get it. And, as a musician and podcaster, I struggle with the same things, just keeping on top of it. I have a little bit of working capital, as we say, this year to try and move the needle a little bit better, and hopefully I'll bring on some help, which I think is the real key for me to move forward. But I get it, and I'm glad to talk to somebody, by the way, who you clearly enjoy performing, or at least I think you do. I don't know if it's something that you do out of some part of necessity of being a musician or something, but it sounds like you enjoy it. A lot of artists I talk to are a little more committed to, and still performing, but more committed to working on writing projects, recording projects, and being extremely selective about how they play, and oftentimes not really playing with bands per se. But as a gigging drummer, performing live has always been the funnest thing in the world. So I like to hear that of you and your plans to. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, no. I was going to say, I agree. I like playing out. I love loud, like rock blues type stuff, like Eric Tesmer, I love playing out because it gives you a chance to really kind of, see what your Stratocaster can do. You really can put it to the test.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and it's just, I imagine you feel some of the same, but the spontaneous collaboration that you get to do when you're on stage with people that you've been playing with long enough is a lot of fun as well. I was thinking of Laura Price again because we were talking about her as well earlier, and you may know that probably know that she's somewhat new to the Austin area. She and I met actually in San Jose, California, and I've told the story a gazillion times, but I had moved there from growing up in DFW and playing there, and then my wife and I moved to San Jose, California, and I got a little lazy about getting out and trying to find anyone to play with. And it kind of takes a while to build your network of friends, and then add to that, you're trying to build a network of musicians. But one day, a friend coaxed me into going to this blues jam at the time was a pretty popular blues club called JJ Blues in San Jose, and Laura Price was hosting it. And
cool.
The story I'm so fond of telling is that I sat in on a couple tunes, and she was very encouraging of me to come back sometime, as though maybe they didn't get a lot of decent drummers come in, and she inspired me to get off my butt and start meeting some people. And, it still took a little while, but I became active because of that. And then since I've spoken with her a couple of times since she's moved to Austin and for the podcast, we have talked about that, she and I, on the podcast, I think. And actually I got to see her in person not too long ago when I was visiting Austin, and she was. We were talking with another musician, and she brought up the importance of jams still, And she mentioned to me, I didn't know it all these years until recently, that jam that I was talking about, she actually was out trying to meet people, so that was her means of meeting people, was to put together a jam, and they were really good, by the way. So I had no idea. I thought she was well established, but. When we were talking to another Austin musician, and the two of them were talking about getting out and going to jams and meeting people. I think she, at the time that we were having that conversation in Austin, she had kind of gotten grounded and, met some musicians that are kind of becoming regular. I think she's maybe, I don't know where she's at today, but, maybe hasn't hit the ideal point of knowing all the people at that time, knowing all the people that she wants to, so she can do the performing and perhaps recording that she wants to. I bring it all up and yammer on about it because, for anyone listening, obviously, and for you too, if by chance that you're not doing that, what a great thing to do. I was reminded.
Yeah, no, you're right though. It's really, really important to get out and actually play with people. If that's what you're trying to do, and get out there and meet musicians and expand your network, that is absolutely the best thing. And you're right, she is very encouraging. She's I've run into her a few times since we stopped sharing an office. And she's always encouraging me to come to her shows and sit in with her and play with her. So yeah, she's good people.
And that's high praise that she encourages you to go sit in with them, because she's quite good.
Yeah. Oh man, she's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Or as Ray Prim said when he found out that we knew her and we were talking about her on the podcast, she's the cat's meow.
Definitely.
And Ray, right?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's Austin star.
That's nice to hear. He's a good guy. I got to see him too briefly.
Yeah, cool.
I got to see him in Austin too. Yeah, so you're hoping you can wrap your arms around marketing. I know how that feels. I was just kind of curious. And when do you think you're going to do your next album? No pressure. I'm not going to make any announcements on your behalf.
Okay. No. Honestly, it would probably be in the fall.
That's pretty soon.
Yeah, it'd probably be in the fall, and it would probably be it would probably be not even an album. It would probably be maybe it'd be definitely less than what I've just done. But so calling it an album is probably too generous. But we'll probably, the people there's this thing kind of going around, I've noticed, where folks are kind of just releasing singles. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the direction I'm going in. So that's why I kind of put it at such a soon, or a date that's not so far away. Because if necessary, I can definitely, just record something myself, as I said, with this group, and pluck something out of, one of the probably 20 or so songs we'll write, and fix it up, master it, layer it, and go on from there, and release it and see how that goes.
You're reminding me. So first, it appears to me that a lot of artists like yourself are, I don't want to say confused, but basically just trying to figure out what the best, means of releasing music is. Should I just?
I'm confused.
Yeah, right. Should I bother with an album? Many people are like, no, an EP maybe, or should I just put out some singles? But I've heard some interesting ideas and things that a few guests have executed, and one of them was last year one of my guests had decided to do release a new song with a video once a month. And then I had another guy I'm just reminded I need to follow up with, who's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Lanny Flowers, who was working on and closing in on finishing his next album, but he had an archive of recorded songs. So he works for the same label that will be supporting his album, and just kind of a promo thing they were doing was releasing a song a month leading up to the release of his new album. And none of those songs were going to be on the new album. They're just archival things that he has, which was very cool for the fans. It was a free download, but at the same time, I was like, that's kind of crazy because now you're busy on two projects, right? You're trying to finish one. But there was that, and then I've talked to people that are thinking of just doing a single every 3 months. So I'll be interested to hear what you do and how it works out.
Interesting.
I will tell you one of the more interesting strategies I've heard from someone I probably mentioned more than anyone else on this podcast, which is Shannon Curtis, and I just found out because I had her husband on as well many weeks later. But they release a new album every June, and leading up to that, they have a fundraiser that they do within their own community that they built, which, by the way, I meant to ask you. I was going to jokingly ask, but not really, because maybe you'll pleasantly surprise me, because I was asking about marketing. Tell me that you have a massive email list.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess massive. I don't know if it's massive, but it's definitely a few hundred.
Good. I love it. But yeah, so she does that, and then I forgot what she called it, but she does a thing. So then it's followed by a house concert tour. That's the other thing that's really interesting about her. That's all she does now is house concerts. She doesn't play the typical venues, and all these house concerts are hosted by her community, which is pretty impressive. So she's clearly got a very thriving community. But what she does when she releases the album is she'll release it, but you can only and she had a name for a phrase for this type of campaign. You could only stream one or two of the songs, like on Spotify, for instance, until which time she had gone out on her tour, made it available to as part of her merch offering at her gigs, and then after that would release the rest of it. So that was one of the more interesting things I'd heard.
That runs the gamut there for sure. The first fellow you mentioned was pretty interesting. I guess you said he released something every month, a song and a video a month. That's pretty wow. But there are definitely guys out there like that are super prolific. But yeah, I guess I fall in one of those categories. I haven't really released anything since I released that last August. So, but that'll be about a year. So yeah, I guess I'm the once a year type fellow.
At the moment, yeah. But I like your idea to just start recording songs and maybe release those. And for what it's worth, I've always thought when you are doing that as long as you are recording them with some consistency, perhaps maybe like production style wise, that you could always put them into a compilation and offer them as an album or EP or something as merch or online at a later date, right? Yeah, that's most definitely. Yeah, and that's funny that you said it, because that's also tricky, making sure it all kind of sounds the same. Because it can vary so drastically, based off how your mic is set and where you have it and what stuff you're using. It could just sound totally different. I had never actually I'd never thought of that until we were just talking now, because I've suggested it or mentioned it, thrown it out as an idea on another episode, and my guest kindly said, yeah, that's a great idea. But, as I was about to say it to you, I thought, boy, I bet that's, the one trick is what you just said, making it, making sure everything is as close to the same as you can, so that at least sounds like it is,
Yeah, definitely.
So what does your band look like right now?
Oh, I've got like hired guns type of thing. Not really a band. like I said, I do that residency thing. I do it solo. I tried playing with a guest a few times, Jake Castillo, super talented guy. He's got a band himself. We played a couple times there, and then I kind of just went more in the direction of the loop pedal type thing, and did the thing by myself. Had a different sound to it. So it's more of a, hey guys, I've got this gig, who's available type thing. At this point, yeah.
That's very Ray Brim.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, he seems to have a tight network of guys that he can call in. I'm sure you know better than I do, but just from him having described to me, because he like you, he has a job, but he does these gigs and seems to be very thoughtful about how he does them.
Definitely.
So the residency gig that you've been referring to, that's at Charlie Brown's in San Antonio, right?
Yeah.
How often do you do that?
Once a month, unless something comes up. I've had to not do it a few times, but I pretty much do it once a month.
That's cool. How do you know those guys?
How did I meet those people? I think I was just there one day, and I walked in, and I think I was invited there. And when I walked in to meet my friends, there was this huge stage there, and it was just like this really cool, sort of old, sort of artisan-looking stage that just like kind of blew. I was just kind of surprised it was there. It didn't seem like the kind of place that would have that. I was like, wow. So, I talked to the bartender, gave me all the right, names and email, and sent it out and started playing there, maybe a month or so after that.
Cool. So, how do you commute? I guess you do same day, like back and forth to Austin for that gig?
Yeah. Before my parents moved up here, or they used to live in San Antonio, obviously, and then they moved up closer to me and my brother. They live in Pflugerville now. I used to stay there overnight because it's usually a pretty late gig, but I usually come back. It's not such a bad drive. At least I'm used to it, and
sure.
The pay is right, so it's a long night, but it's fun. It's a good time when I'm actually playing.
Is that about an hour drive, or how far is it?
From where I'm at now, it's about 50 minutes, 45 minutes on a good day.
That's not bad. Not too bad. It's not 10 minutes, but hey.
Yeah.
I did a worse one. I did a worse one when, I don't know if you know, I live in Panama City, and I played, but I live in Panama, not in Panama City. And I'm about really an hour under normal traffic to Panama City, but there's never normal traffic. So hour and a half. My wife's looking at me. Hour and a half, but there's never normal traffic until, the dead of night, and then maybe. But, I did much worse, so I don't know if that'll be a regular thing. That's brutal. That was brutal for sure. Well, Emmanuel, I really I like your stuff. I love your last album. I hope that you do get some new material happening this coming fall, and I also hope that you will get your face and your I don't know. I want to say your opinions, your authentic self on the socials. I think your people would really enjoy it, and you probably make a lot of new friends that way. I wish you a lot of luck on getting the new projects going, and look forward to talking to you very soon as we near the date that this episode airs.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Roberto. I appreciate you reaching out, and I definitely will take your advice on that. Something I've kind of been bouncing around with my girlfriend Miranda for a while. She kind of hears me being a Grinch about it every so often, just kind of beating myself up. I need to get out there and meet people, and get online, get in these groups, and yada yada. So yes, you're right, and I'm definitely going to, I guess you could say, make that one of my New Year's things. I guess you can make resolutions on the 17th. It's not so bad. It's just a few days late.
Yeah, not at all. I made one on like the 10th or something.
Yeah.
And by the way,
cool. It's been a great chat.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that your website, etomesmusic.com, and it's ETOM like Mary, ES music.com. Appears to be a great hub.
Yes, sir.
And it's EE2_band on Instagram. A cool place to check you out. And I'm going to do it first and just mention that track that we're going to feature at the end, which is from your 2018 release, October Skies, and the name of the track is Welcome Sunshine.
Cool.
We will be talking to you soon, brother.
Sounds good.
Hey, thanks for listening. Question for you. Are you struggling to move your music journey forward? I can help. If not personally, then by referring you to the next best available resources. Schedule a free 15-minute call with me to find out if I can indeed help you. It's easy. Just visit unstarvingmusician.com/coaching to schedule your call today. Look for links to just about everything covered in this episode in the show notes at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. This episode was powered by the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, How to Get Booked and Paid What You're Worth Over and Over Again. It's available on paperback, Kindle, and ebooks just about everywhere you can find them. It's also available as a standalone podcast called the Unstarving Musician's Guide podcast. You can learn more about the book and companion podcast at unstarvingmusician.com/book. I'd love it if you picked up a copy and would love it even more if you left a review. With much gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.